Bungalow Bill here. We are back on the weapons test platform because we're doing a new build with a type of weapon that I've not used too much in quite a long time. There was a particle cannon on the Tycho, but it was just sort of a minor weapon that I didn't do a huge amount of testing to really lock in. So I've thrown a few things together here just to remind myself how particle cannons work, or to find out how particle cannons work, because they've changed since the last time I've really explored how they worked, and it's hard to go through all the patch notes to figure out exactly how particle cannons work now, and there's not a great resource that I could find to just sort of read about them, so I had to do a little bit of science myself. So this setup is just doubling the tube length, because it used to be the case that it would, rather than just increasing the damage, you would start to eventually get additional beams instead. I thought I recalled the patch note saying that that wasn't the case, and that seems to be the case. These just linearly scale with the tube length. I gave myself a few different lenses just to sort of look at the stats between them, but it wasn't really anything that you can't see in the build menu. And then beyond that, I threw a few different things together. Right now, I'm sort of looking at using the scatter lens because I'm looking to make a relatively short-range vehicle. And for the short-range lens to really make sense, you kind of have to get very close. I'm using it on the Tycho right now just because of geometry, but the scatter lens would work better on it. So one of the reasons I'm looking at the scatter lens is because it packs in really nicely with local weapon controllers, and I am looking to use it on a vehicle where it's probably going to be a fixed weapon instead of a turret, although I have it, mounted on turrets here. Now, something that I'm looking at doing is just having all the tubes be straight and seeing if that sort of minimizes the damage that I take, as well as a lot of tubes and a lot of firing pieces rather than just sort of one mess like this. I did some testing with the different damage types and the different possible particle cannon stats. For this one, the relatively close range, right now I was looking at a focus of about 25%. It's not showing the beam inaccuracy stats. I'll fire at something in a little bit so that those will start populating. And I was looking at the different stats. So with this many lenses, I found that impact was kind of interesting because with all the small impacts, you'd sort of just cut through something rather than having like the normal impact spread out. The EMP, I tried EMP with both a bunch of small lenses and with larger lenses that do just large jolts of EMP. Since the EMP changes with their mechanism for spreading, I've had a lot of issues with EMP charges getting lost. I did a test with this lens, switching it to EMP, which it'll do 4 beams of 10,000 EMP damage per beam, and they were just getting lost way too much. It just wasn't worth it. I was shooting at the Paladin, and a lot of the time it just wouldn't do any EMP damage, even when it hit the main hull. As well as the way EMP damage is mitigated now, makes it very hard, as far as I can tell, to actually do damage to things with EMP unless you hit very close to them. So I looked at piercing. Piercing looks like it's very heavily specialized towards breaking large thrustercraft style, just bricks of heavy armor. And for something that's going to be a little bit more early game, that doesn't really speak to me that much. So for me, it was between explosive shock and impact, which actually performed relatively similar to each other in the test that I was doing against some of the early game Steel Strider ships or mid-game Steel Strider ships like the Paladin. And what I found was interesting is because of the way the explosive damage drop-off works, it seems to do better the more lenses I split it among, because you have less issues with fall-off. So that's sort of what was interesting me the most. I'm going to spawn something in really close. I have God mode on, but I'm still not going to let it shoot at me. We'll let it move a little bit. There we go, and then we'll turn that off. So this is about what I'm looking at. The energy draw on this is the same as an entire turret. I may not be able to shoot at it right now unless I turn movement back on and let it get away from me. is about the same as an entire turret of the Tycho, but the firepower is about the same as one barrel. And that's about equivalent as far as actual material draw is concerned, because I always figure that the sort of railguns like the Tycho has use an equivalent amount of material in energy and ammo. So the cost of running this is probably about equivalent to one barrel of the Tycho's railguns. Now, I spent a while trying to figure out sort of how big I'll make this. Originally, I was planning on making a medium to larger particle cannon craft that would have sort of a turret mounted amidships that could turn like to port or starboard or down and have it circle enemies. But I think I'm going to go with an early game craft now, more of a fighter style thing, and I'll build a later game style particle accelerator cannon ship later. So this will let us look at the inaccuracies, which I'm planning on having this fight at close range, so I can accept the approximately 5 meters at 500 meters. If it turns out not to work well enough, I'll just turn the focus up a little bit. But turning the focus down can really give you quite a bit of additional power. The other reason I kind of wanted explosive shock was that I believe all damage types get bonuses underwater. So I want this to help me against submarines a little bit as well. It's one of the additional roles I'm looking for from it. I would really like, so the explosive shock should hopefully get a little bit of bonus damage there. And if I let it shoot ships below the waterline, we'll get a little bit of damage there as well. So, I mean, we're getting moderate damage, really, against sort of the Paladin. But this is a particle cannon. I'm not expecting it to just explode vehicles with a relatively low power particle cannon. It's just unavoidable chip damage that'll hopefully be coming in from a very, very dodgy vehicle. All right, this is the test platform that I was looking at for sort of getting the movement underway. Now, I guess I saved it in hover mode. I was messing around with making an Ornithopter, and I decided that I would give it a hover mode for fun. It can't really adjust height or anything in hover mode, and this one's not really balanced or anything. It just turns the wings sideways and turns off yaw control. So let's turn off hover mode so that it actually functions. And there we have it. So this is sort of what I'm looking at, sort of just as the base, that I'll have some sort of Ornithopter style thing, and I'm going to build a mass of particle cannons as well as an engine for them. Here, have it fire out sort of a fixed angle in the front, give it a really dodgy flight pattern around enemies, and then it'll occasionally, at about the same rate as its charge time on the particle cannons, turn to face them, fire, and then turn back away and start being dodgy again. This can turn quite quickly. It uses yaw controls from these wings, which is why it's a little bit twitchy. And it makes them get desynced from each other, which makes it a little bit twitchier as well. I was looking at some code here that would resync the wings up over time in a straight line, but it turns out not to make a big difference with the speed that the craft goes at. So I don't think I'm going to do it. I'm doing this not because I think that Ornithopters are good, because I don't really think that they are. These are basically just going to be... These could just be replaced with custom jet engines here, which would drain a little bit of materials, but would be much smaller. And for something like this, which I want to be really dodgy, having these vibrate up and down is going to make it catch missiles that it could otherwise possibly avoid. I've seen a few posts on Reddit about Ornithopters, which is part of the reason I felt like doing one. From looking at some of them, I didn't really understand how they worked, so it took me a little bit of messing around to actually get one that functions. So we'll look at what's in these, and these are wing blocks, and they're set so that if they move up or down, they'll apply a force forwards. Wing blocks will always apply a force in the same direction, so in the up or down direction, in response to air moving in either the forward or the back direction. And then they're each mounted on spin blocks. You don't have to do this, but I'm doing opposed wings so that they counter each other in terms of the center of mass. Now, you can have spin blocks spin in two ways. They can either be rotate to angle, or they can be continuous. Now, something that I learned is, despite the fact that some Ornithopters looked like they used the other the other option, which are these. And I tried using them. If you use rotate to angle on a spin block, those spin block helid blades do not provide any force. They do absolutely nothing. Now, there's a reason I'm using spin to angle, and it's so that I can set it to positive 45 and then negative 45. You could do other angles too, but I just felt like doing that. So it sweeps out a 90-degree angle total. And in the breadboard, these two accumulators are just used to be square wave generators. And this is just a conversion because it has to convert from degrees to radians because of the fact that one drive for the angle is in like 180 degrees is 0 to 1, and then the other one is 0 to 30 radians per second for the rotational speed. I have no idea why it's done this way, but that's how it is. So all this does is it takes the drive input and we'll map it to a certain rotational speed as a fraction of the total rotational speed. So 1 is 30 radians per second. Well, this is C, which is the angle. These are the ones that actually drive the wings. So 1 is 30 radians per second, 0.5 is 15 radians per second, etc. And this other part generates a square wave such that the wings will not stop if they sweep out the frequency. It's done like this so that even if you vary the speed of the wings, they will always sweep a full span with every flap. I do say that, but I do not guarantee, what should I say, measurement error in terms of game ticks. So basically what happens is that everything moves in increments of 1/40th of a second. I do have a little thing in here that actually checks the time of the game tick, just in case it decides to not be a 40th of a second. But I think it's always supposed to be a 40th of a second. Maybe if you put things in 0.1 times speed, it's not. I haven't really tested. But it should work regardless of what the math in this should work regardless of the game tick. But I should make sure that my square waves break down so that 1/40th of a second is a factor of their period, so that they will always be at maximum extension on a game tick. I don't do that, so there's going to be a little bit of error. But this is also part of the reason that I use rotate to angle. If I'm just doing rotate in degrees, I'm going to wind up with small numerical inaccuracies over time because I don't have anything to provide feedback to say what angle is my spin block at. So my breadboard will slowly start to disagree with reality about what angle the spin blocks are actually at. The easy way to fix this is to put physical limits on. So build the block out so that your wing crashes at the exact angle that you want its limit to be, probably around 45 degrees, but you'd have to test exactly what it turns out to be. Then you can be sure that you won't gather inaccuracies over time as long as your wing crashes occasionally. But I didn't want my wings to drift, so I'm using rotate to angle, and because I'm using rotate to angle, I have to use wing blocks. The other reason to use wing blocks is that they just are so strong. For the spin block heliblades, I would have to provide engine power to get them this strong. These are free. That was the wrong button. I want to unpause. These are free, and we're fast. The top speed says 204 meters per second. I don't think we're quite that fast. I don't know why it says we're that fast, but I think we go about 175.
Moving out.
Now, there are pitfalls. So you will have seen, if you've been browsing Reddit or that sort of thing, some issues that people have if they use a lot of wing blades on a craft or wing blocks on a craft, whether it be an ornithopter or just a small block of wing blocks. I think what happens is because wing blocks convert velocity into force. If you have enough of them for the mass of your craft, they will actually increase the velocity of the craft more than you lose it from drag and from the fact that, well, their velocity vector doesn't line up with your original velocity vector. It's 90 degrees to it. And if your craft tumbles so that it keeps changing its orientation with regards to your velocity vector, it will very quickly stack up and just exponentially accelerate your vehicle until you'll encounter serious problems. The first The first Ornithopter that I built was just a little piece of wood with 2 wings, so it had a lot of wing blocks, and it just like rammed into the ocean floor at a significant fraction of the speed of light. Once I increased the mass of the Ornithopter, I stopped having those issues. And I don't think that Ornithopters go that fast because the wings are powerful. Because they're not. You can just use a constant rotational spin block instead of the wings, and it would be easier, it would be better, and really the same with a custom jet engine. There are other issues with using the wing blocks as well, because they take the movement of your vehicle itself into account, which is part of the reason that people's Ornithopters just teleport. So it can really get you into trouble. But that's basically how this setup and this process of building the Ornithopter is how I'm going to build this craft. So it's not going to rely on the wings for everything. All the wings are going to do is control forwards and control yaw. Outside of battle, just for fun, I might have it put itself into hover mode, but I don't think it's going to use it in battle. I looked to see how fast, if I angled these wings, my craft could go up or down. It has so much air resistance up and down right now. Maybe once it's finished, it won't have as much, and that'll be feasible. But right now, it's very slow up and down. The wing blocks just aren't as strong as they seem. Or they are strong, but these wings aren't as strong as they seem. So anyway, I'm going to take the particle cannon components and a simple steam engine, cram it in here, and then get back to you with the results. Beautiful. So this is approximately what I was thinking for the actual configuration of the weapons. Depending on how things fit and how I feel about it, I'm either going to spread these further apart and leave more room between them, or I don't know, something. Take 2 off the bottom and put them in here, which would leave me at an even height here, so that it'd have to be symmetric between 2 blocks. But that's fine too. I'll do something. But anyway, the real thing here is just that these are about 1500 energy per second per piece, along with 15,000 energy per shot, which means that I need at least 90,000 energy in the batteries, which isn't very much, so I'll be able to get away without too many batteries, but I need to be able to generate 9,000 energy per second. Now, for a smaller craft, the right way to do it is probably a steam engine, although a steam engine this small might actually be a little bit difficult. For this, I'm just sort of looking at using steam turbines again because I'm lazy. This really simple setup, 720 energy per material burned, 48.5 energy per volume, and creates a little bit more than a third of the energy that I'm going to need. A little bit, I'm going to have on my small battery banks, which are going to be much smaller than this. This is just overkill to make sure that I'm draining energy so I can get my steam stats correct. I'm going to have engines, which will give me a little bit of power to use some jet engines to fix attitude and that sort of thing. Although hopefully I won't need that much of them. So I'm going to need 3 of these steam turbines, small amount of batteries, some material storage, not this much material storage, but some material storage, and then some AI stuff. So let's place all of that, get everything packed in neatly, skin it up with armor, and then I'll be right back. Well, we're a bit of a chunker, aren't we? And I suppose they can't all be bangers, or at least the evidence points overwhelmingly to that conclusion. But we have a thing. Definitely a lot of drag up front. Even though it'll look awful, I might do something to at least reduce it a little bit. We'll see. Also, it's in line with the Dune theme, so I don't know. We've got some material burn from jets now to bring us up. It brings us from about 75 meters per second to about 100. But if you built something more aerodynamic, you could definitely get it going way faster. But I kind of wanted it to be a bit bug themed, and although they are long and skinny, they're not that skinny. Still, it might have been better not to add so much onto the width. With the steam turbines here, could have brought them back here or even back here and made us way longer. I'm probably still going to add two more thrusters here and here so that we can turn faster, especially at low speeds. I'm going to tweak our AI a little bit so that we'll point at enemies occasionally. and we'll see how we do. Now, I'm going to use AI cards for the actual maneuvering. I am just powering the wings off the breadboard. I don't really feel like making a full breadboard craft right now. I'm also probably just going to, rather than put armor and stuff all over this, I'm probably going to hide this area with decos. We'll see. If I get really frustrated with the decorations, I will just switch to doing armor. But it's almost time for some combat testing, so a few more tweaks and then I'll spawn in some enemy vehicles and see how we do. Currently, about 39,000 materials, 25 total firepower. If I save this vehicle, despawn it, load the new vehicle in. Alright, relatively low armor cost of 5,000 materials. I'm fine with that though, that we're relatively small, relatively fast. We've got pretty much 2 layers of either alloy or, in this case, just alloy and applique panels everywhere. Even our wings are fairly armored. We'll be able to take anti-aircraft fire for the most part, like flak shells and the small frag shells that get shot at aircraft. We'll be able to take those fairly well. I'll do a little bit of testing. We're trying to attain way too low an altitude right now. See how we do. And we have no actual way of getting back out of the water. I may have added too much weight, so that's another thing too. Another thing to address, we used to be able to get back out of the water. Having just the top jet fire doesn't really help either. I may tweak the wings a little bit so that it's willing to gain height automatically using them. Anyway, a little bit of tweaking to do, and then we'll fight some enemy vehicles. Alright, we are theoretically functional. Let's go ahead and spawn in an enemy and see if we actually do anything. Now, I would like to spawn in something slow. I don't really want to use this as an interceptor that much. We should be able to get out of the water. There we go. Okay, so spawn in something slow. I don't really want to use this as an interceptor that much because I find it's best to not really try to fight interceptors with interceptors, which is really the reason why we might need to either be able to yaw faster or for me to give point at target more time, because we didn't actually get to point at the target. But anyway, it's why the Thundershock isn't built like an interceptor, it's built like a tank. Because if you just use a fly swatter weapon and just exchange blows with an enemy interceptor and you have more armor than them, you just win. So I don't really like the real interceptor on interceptor fights. Now, I am using some AI routines, so we're not going to be quite as smart as we would be if I actually did this myself. We're just switching between circle at distance and point at distance. And I set up our circle at distance so that we should be relatively dodgy. We've got God mode on right now, so don't expect us to take any damage. I'm just testing out our flight routines, our ability to actually hit things, whether or not we keep enough energy up, which we should. We're not capable of drawing our energy down all the way. We should be really tanky though. I don't really expect anything like the Allegiance to really hurt us that badly. Flak shells just shouldn't get there, given that we're made out of light alloy and applique panels. So I still need to go and put detection on this, and that's going to be the next test. Well, maybe I'll see if we can actually, engage something like the Hake with moderate success as far as at least being able to shoot at it. We don't hold our weapon fire for given distances. I'll set that as well. So we took missile damage, which is a little bit disappointing. I need to see if I can get us to be even bouncier to see if I can avoid missiles a little bit better. So we are not pointing at them enough to actually fire, which is a bit disappointing. There we go. Okay, we took a shot eventually. It wasn't great, and I'm going to expect a lot of misses unless I really get the detection spot on. I'll spawn in 2 more Hakes and just see what happens. We also currently only get a shot every 10 seconds. Okay, we're not going to dodge those missiles. They're way too agile. We're not really that fast either. It's kind of a fun concept vehicle, but I made us a little bit too chonky, maybe. That was interesting. That must have just been a bug, though. I can't really imagine that being anything but a bug, the fact that we fired right there. I'm pretty sure detection can't be an issue. Yep. So I'm going to go with that being a bug. Yeah, if the enemy gets close to us like this and we can't retreat, we are never going to face them. As missiles are pretty agile. We dodged a few, which is good. I say we're never going to face them. When our point at activates, we should point at them regardless of distance. I have don't retreat if too close on. So we should point at them no matter what, once every 10 seconds. We freaked out there a bit. Our point at might have bugged a little bit. I don't know. Right now we're at point at and maintain distance. We should be trying to point at them right now, but we're not doing it, which is a little bit disappointing. Yeah, so we do okay against ships, but for some reason we are not pointing at airplanes like we should. I might have to just go and use a breadboard routine instead, because this seems to be defective. We are just not pointing at the enemy sometimes. Maybe, you know what? Let's see if that changes anything. Well, okay. I mean, we had charged particle cannons and that sort of thing. We're also not yawing as fast as we can. I'm considering making it so that instead of stopping a wing, that we'll actually flip a wing backwards. That's much better. Yeah, so that don't retreat if too close was actually stopping us from even turning at them in the first place, which is really the opposite of what I'd want. Let's do a few more hakes just to make sure that that works. If it does, I'm going to do detection and just call it a day. I don't think I really need this to be perfect. I just want to make something a little bit cool. Well, I say call it a day. I'm going to try to decorate it a little bit and make it look better than it does right now. Oh yeah, this is working much better. For such a small craft, our firepower is reasonable. But I don't know if I left enough room for missiles inside the craft. I say for missiles. I don't plan on making attack missiles for this vehicle. I want to make one sonar buoy. Excellent. I might do some more tuning later, and I might play around with this type of craft more later. I wouldn't be super surprised if wing blocks get tweaked in such a way that makes this sort of ornithopter not really work anymore. But I don't know. Seems like a fun craft. And sort of because of that, I'm not sure I'm going to invest too much time in making sort of the ornithopter-like vehicle, just because I'm worried about it getting nerfed out of existence. I may do a little bit of stuff like hide the jet engines a bit better so that they don't get shot off, because right now it's just sort of game over if these get shot off. But anyway, detection, and I will be right back. Well, I've been doing a little bit of detection testing. Unfortunately, we have some trouble engaging really deep diving submarines. We have two issues. One is actually getting close enough for my weapons to fire to become within range. Not that they have much luck hitting us either, but to get within range. And the other is to actually point at them when we're supposed to. If I decide to sink more time into this later, which I almost certainly will, I'll probably make it fully bread-based, because there isn't really as much as I would like that I could do with just sort of tweaking the A options more. I did turn down our willingness to pitch towards the target so that we wouldn't just get stuck pointing up or down. I'll turn it up a little bit more. The main issue with pitch to target is that, as far as I can tell, pretty much all of the AIs in this game and like the missiles and everything love to use Euler angles, and when you do that, the closer you get towards the poles, pointing straight up or pointing straight down, the more heavily distorted the math tends to be, and it stops really giving you the results that you want. I did improve its ability to get out of the water even further. I found that if it dove too far, it would get completely stuck. So now it has a few hydrofoils, which give it the ability to control attitude underwater, so it can move because the wings operate underwater, and it'll let it pull back out of a dive. So let's just bring in an easy target for the sort of thing where we are currently using our own detection system. I've done Higgs as well. We're not as reliable as I'd like to be, but we can hit Higgs. So not a fantastic craft, but not a terrible one either. Although I should probably actually reduce our combat distance. Yeah, 540 meters is too far. We need to fight really close in. This will mean that we take more APS fire, but our fire itself is not that accurate. All right, now we should actually shoot way more often. I accidentally had us circling outside of our particle cannon distance, which wasn't the best, but we can operate now. It's a functioning craft. I'm actually sort of happy with what I did with this sort of wing area. So that this is supposed to look like it compresses air for the engines. And this is supposed to look sort of like a linear aerospike on the back. This is just to reduce drag a little bit. Detection components actually have significantly reduced drag. And I'm going to cover this entire thing with some decorations. And I think that's about all that I'm going to do for the craft. I'm going to call it a day after that. I think right now it's effective enough. It's not fantastic, but it's a fun vehicle. Oh, I might also decorate the tail a little bit. I just sort of gave it a stub. I might do something. I don't know what though. Anyway, decorations and getting back. Well, it is certainly a thing, and it at least has some degree of functionality. I covered up the front a little bit in a fight. Well, I think it'll look okay from a distance. Slapped some paint on it in general. I'm testing out sort of a more pastel color scheme. Maybe not purple for all of my craft, but I might go and make some of the more vibrant colors a little bit more pastel. I wound up giving it some horizontal white stuff to sort of detract from the general rest of how the craft looks, in sort of taking a page out of the Borderwise book. Anyway, I think I'm going to do the combat testing, at least with God mode off camera, and make a few more tweaks as required, but I'll probably try this in the campaign as it is. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed watching, and as one of my roommates used to say, I'll see you in the future.